came to Ordinary People Achieving Impact OPI webinar series for the fourth. So today we already have our uh, consecutive moderator, Mr. Irshad, and we
Nice.
already have two panelists in here. Thank you, everyone that already. I think there are some problems. Ordinary
Oh,
people achieve.
Ivandri, if you're okay, like I can take
Yeah, yeah.
over. Yeah,
I
you
will.
can.
Okay, and please, Irshad, uh, do your progress.
Work my magic.
Yes,
All
for
right.
project, and have enjoy this webinar. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone watching and everyone in the audience right now. So, just to introduce myself, my name is Irshad. I'm the moderator for today. I represent an organization called Young Sustainable Impact Southeast Asia. And our mission is to empower Southeast Asian youth to solve sustainability challenges. However, when I had the privilege of going for a trip to China as part of the Changemaker Exchange Program, I met Ivandri as well as Daniel. And we started asking ourselves the question of why is it that social entrepreneurs are the only ones that uh, are sometimes legitimized to make an impact, and we wanted to explore topics related to how ordinary people can actually go about making a change within their own communities or within their own sphere of influence. So today's topic uh, is basically about finding your role in the social change ecosystem, and this is the fourth talk or in a series of panel discussions that we've had over the few weeks. And today we're very lucky to have two very distinguished panelists. So we have Anissa from EcoFund Indonesia, and we also have Ernie from Code for Asia. So yeah, I guess. All right. So yeah, so before we start digging into the topic of how each of us each person has what your thoughts are on ordinary people achieving impact, let's actually get a little bit of an introduction from each of you. So what are some highlights of your own journey of impact, and what's the story behind why you've decided to do what you do today? So Anissa, do you want to start first, or
So yeah, thank you, Irshad. So yeah, for the introduction. So hi everyone. It's so nice to meeting you here. I'm Anissa. So I'm from Indonesia, and I'm currently running a social enterprise. It is called EcoFund Indonesia. So basically, we created product and services in environmental educations using game-based learning methods. So yeah, basically it was, I think it was started when the it was, I think I was a bachelor degree student, so it was a long time ago. But I create a board game called Ecofanopoly, so maybe you can see the board game at the back. So it's one of our product. And so actually the idea came up when I was studying in Indonesia, and at that time I feel like I'm quite ordinary. I'm just like a student who just starting to enter the real world. And but then at that time there was a turning point where I pay more attention on one issues, which is about climate change, which has led me to think about the how we can um, change this current status quo, where in Indonesia there are so many environmental problems, where then I just started by raising awareness, and then I decided to make games. So yeah, I think that's all for the introductions. Thank you.
thanks, Anissa. Ernie, what about you?
Hi everyone. So this is Ernie from Kufa Asia. We're based in Singapore. So we're also in the business of building communities and building software. And I think like as a non-CS major myself, actually I studied economics back in university. I've actually always had an early interest in computers, but I mean, at least at the point of my graduation, I think IT wasn't that cool of a thing yet, unlike how it is now. So basically, I think at that time, I was kind of like just teaching some kids in Singapore how to make games, how to code with some friends project. And then things kind of like just grew organically from there because as I was talking to these students, I realized that when I was back in secondary school and I was interested in all this stuff, there was no avenue for me to connect with other young people with similar interests. And then back then in, I think around 2016, thereabouts, it was still like a very similar situation that were facing secondary school kids in Singapore. And I've also had this particular encounter when I was traveling, wherein I basically met this 8-year-old girl when I was traveling around China. So this was basically happening. I was teaching coding in some schools in Singapore, just as sort of like some extracurricular. And then that particular 8-year-old, I mean that particular incident left a really deep impression on me because like she's 8 years old, but she's already dropped out of school. And her family kind of like traveled thousands of kilometers to be in that particular location to work. And this was happening when I was teaching coding. So I was kind of like just looking at how, there are people learning how to code, how to create the future in some communities at the point in time. And then at the same time, even so in this, in a way, more developed economies, there is still not a lot of avenues for people to explore the interest. Right, but then at the same point in time in other communities, there are actually people who are at such great risk of losing out from automation and all that. So, I think that kind of like just inspired me to, create a hackathon, inviting people with or without the background to come together to learn to code as a way to solve problems. And then things pretty much just grew from there. I did not expect to be starting a company at all, but then things just happened. So that's how it all came about. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing, Annie. And I think one thing that struck me about both your stories is that although they're quite different in the sense that for Anissa, like you kind of saw the urgency of bringing to light certain environmental problems within the context of Indonesia, whereas for Ernie, your the whole thing kind of came about where you saw that there was a potential for technology to be a very strong force for inclusion. I think at the end of the day, like there are parallels in the story where like you just wanted to start like a small thing and it's somehow kind of not say balloon, but like snowballed into something bigger than just yourself. And I think that's really quite fascinating. So I want to dig a little bit more into the people that you actually have day-to-day interactions with. So tell for both of you, like open question, whoever wants to go first. But can you tell me a little bit more about like the kinds of ordinary people that you interact with, either as a result of you selling products or selling services, or like working together with beneficiaries? Like who are these ordinary people that you interact with on a daily basis?
I guess I can go first. Yeah. So basically, because our work deals with building communities for people with or without coding backgrounds to come together and solve problems with tech. So I would say that over the years, when we first started, we kind of like dealt with people from very diverse ages, but then over time, we kind of like focus our community building around, I would say like young people, their age like say 18 and above. So these are really like students from any sort of background, because I think the reality that we live in now is just so that tech is all around us. So it's no longer something that just a particular group of people get to play and to experiment with. So the sort of ordinary people that we've worked with are really mostly university age youth at the moment. But I've also worked with like people from other age groups and like even some stay-at-home moms in some cases to basically like build these communities, and these youths basically typically come from different countries. So, yeah.
Okay, so can I continue? Yeah,
go ahead.
So basically, we're dealing with so many ordinary people since where we start creating the game. So maybe I want to share a little bit about the history of why we exist, my social enterprise exists. So basically, at the time when I invented the game, at that time I just bring my idealism, my thought about, I think people here, especially like the kids, should learn about environmental awareness, about I mean environmental issues as young as they can. So basically, it brings back when I saw that, I think from my own personal childhood memories, I don't have any, I think, enough knowledge about these environmental issues. So actually, I just learned it when I entered university. My major, I study landscape architecture, where actually the root of the, I think the root of the knowledge is ecology, where we are talking about human interactions with the environment and how human really relying on the nature, but actually at the same time they destroying the nature. Actually, during the first year of my university, I feel so ashamed because my professor just shared so many embarrassing story how human in the past few centuries we just destroying and destroying without thinking about the future needs of the future generations. And then there was a time when I think, okay, something wrong with the society, so I think I need to make something which I believe I should do something that I love, or something that I can apply, and it has to be easy. So actually I don't have any idea at the time if I have to create some kind of super advanced technology or something, but I think I can start with something that very human, which just people to kind of the culture where actually human actually is a like a it's like a player. I mean, we basically how to say, there is a terms for that. Oh, it's a homo ludens, which means man of the player. Basically playing is actually a natural activity for us as humans. So I think, why don't we just mix this kind of this playing culture along with the environmental issues, and then we can bring some kind of engaging experience. And also not from the other side, that the curriculum in, I think, not only Indonesia but most of the schools, the formal education are really theoretical based. Basically what we need to do is try to memorize and then pass the exam and get the highest score, but sometimes we lose the meaning of what is learning. I mean, I think most curriculum don't connect the students to the real conditions, to the real what's happening. And when we're talking about climate change, it's really complicated issues, right? So maybe you have no idea how to explain the mechanism of why the climate change happens, and then makes the student to memorize it. And but after that, when they memorize, they just don't know what to do with this kind of knowledge. So we actually want to simplify all of that, and then making it more simple way, so that they can know what's the essence, what's the purpose of why we learn this. So which is why we create games, and we hope that the younger generation can do better than our generation, than the past generation, and then they can make some kind of better community in terms of protecting the environment. And we also want to normalize the communication among like mothers, among mothers, parents, and the kids, and among the families, that talking about this climate change just as simple as talking about, yeah, where do we go for lunch, or where do we go to play, and yeah, just kind of like very unconscious experience. So that's what we want to achieve. Yeah.
Okay, understood. So Anissa, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question related to that about okay, so the kinds of ordinary people that we talk about are both students, but also like people in families, and also I guess anyone who has a theoretical understanding of how climate change is happening, how all of these things are happening, but have no idea how to take it from that theory to some sort of action. So I was wondering whether you could share any interesting anecdotes or stories about people who have gone through the game, or like you've either sold on the board game, or you've gone through like I've seen on your Facebook page that there are like giant versions of the board game.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
quite
we
cool.
have giant, yes.
So like are there any interesting interactions that happen during those sessions, or like after that people tell you about?
So yeah, we actually, since we have, I think the game actually have been circulated around Indonesia, and also we have shipped to some countries as well. So we received some story, and when like our customer are encouraged to post their playing experience and tag us, and then we can see the story. So yeah, I think I received some stories, and some stories that I remember. Yeah, there was one mom. Oh, actually, she purchased the game. She wants to use it at home, so she wants to play with the kids. Because I think there are many parents that feel really tired with the digital games. Actually, I'm not against with the digital. I play digital game as well, but well, like some parents are thinking that I think my child should have another real experience rather than just staring at one smartphone and playing for the whole day. So yeah, and then when she played the game with the kids, actually, her daughter is like 7 years old, 7 or 8 years old, and then I think she sent WhatsApp to us, and yeah, she said, oh yeah, I played the game, and she said that she actually has no idea with this carbon emission thing, with all of this, that the earth is dying. But then when she play with her daughter, and then like I think just several hours after they play the game, actually the game that she purchased, we actually have several series. The one that she purchased is about carbon emission. So it's actually the mission is the players learn to manage their carbon footprint based on what they have done. So it's kind of like truth or dare games as well. So and after they play the game, and then suddenly the the mom just finished from the bathroom, and when she go out from the bedroom, and then she forgot to turn off the lights, and then the daughter told her that mom, turn off the lights or you can get carbon. So she's quite surprised with that, like, oh, how did she know that? So it's kind of like very what is it, inspiring story for me, because maybe the daughter has no idea with the carbon things, with the chemical, but actually she knows the consequences of like just letting our bad behavior that can contribute a small portion of carbon emission. So yeah, I think that's one of a good story that we had.
Wow, that's fascinating. Like the fact that even as a 7 or 8 year old,
Yeah,
they're
yeah,
still able to understand like the complexity, well, maybe not the full complexity, but
yeah,
understand
yeah.
the direct relationship and actually have taken a step into telling someone that like, hey, there's something that you can do about it. Wow, that's very
Yeah, yeah,
interesting.
yeah, yeah. Actually, that's what we want to achieve. Just like finding some small effects. Even we know that changing behavior is really huge challenge, right? Because we cannot change, like people's behavior just one away in one day or 1 month. So it has to be nurtured and has to be consistently applied. Yeah, yeah.
That's very cool. And going over to Ernie, so on the flip side, like the stuff that you do mainly related to hackathons, like different programs. From my understanding, you also have an involvement with uh, helping university students curate modules for themselves within the university as well. So I think the question I want to ask you is basically like throughout the process of like doing all these, like bringing people together, trying to get people to have some sort of like tangible output. Like, are there any interesting stories of um, people coming together and basically being able to find a way to not just bring something into the world, but also bring something into the world that has some sort of like societal impact, some sort of like positive, like yeah, positive impact. Like, just wanted to hear your like one or two stories. Like 2 stories is good. I know you have a lot of stories.
I mean, I guess like I feel like actually when we do this hackathons, right? People are actually mostly entering with ideas. So like everyone kind of like already has that idea in their heads about how they can change the world. So yeah, I mean, I could talk on and on about these projects. But I think like what I've seen to be really inspiring is really when we see participants kind of like collaborating and sharing the experiences with each other. In a sense that so for example, I think for one of our winning teams from last year, when we talked to them subsequently, actually I was quite surprised to learn that initially they were not even thinking about participating in the competition, because like I mean, and then when we sort of like reflected on that, we realized it's because in a way I guess like um, people still need that sort of like, validation and encouragement to take part, to be a part of something, right? Like, I think many people are probably giving themselves less credit for what they are doing, in the sense that actually they are probably kind of like changing the world in their own ways. But maybe in that they do not sort of like slap themselves with the label of a social entrepreneur, right? Kind of like which is what you are sort of like talking about. This whole capacity for ordinary people to create impact. So what I find to be surprising or interesting for me from the competitions is actually that for hackathon, for competition, that a lot of non-coders see as this intimidating thing where techies get together and create magic. Actually, even the people inside, probably need some encouragement to be there. It's really a lot of this sort of like social relationships and the influences around you that kind of like nudges you one way or another. And I think that particular insight about how one winning team may not have even taken part if it were not for somebody else's encouragement was actually really interesting for me. And what happened at the boot camp, because we also sort of like organize boot camps for these winners from different countries to come together and connect and to learn from each other. And I think what was interesting that emerged from the bootcamp was just so that we kind of like just saw how people were sharing their tips and advice with each other, and you really very quickly realize that I think in the world that we live in now, when it comes to learning, right, everyone is both a teacher and a student. So even I think especially in the tech world, because no one knows all these different technologies, and then there is always a new framework. So a lot of the things that people do are kind of like standing on somebody else's shoulder and learning from your peers and all that. And I mean, seeing that through the sort of like actual experiences of some of our participants and looking at how that has pushed them forward, I think to me, illuminating in the sense that I think the social element to community building, to even tech, basically is actually really important and salient at the end of the day. And then like I guess like apart from that, there are also like many times in which we feel like we ourselves as organizers are schooled by like younger kids, because like actually in a way we tend to focus our marketing around university age youth, simply because it's a lot easier. But every year, like you kind of like get a few really like super young whiz kids who are just like building stuff that makes you feel like what was I doing at the age? I think like for this year, the youngest that we had were like 11 or 13 years old. And they were like building something for office workers to kind of like distress during this pandemic when they're working from home and all that. And I just find that if you could be thinking about problems the world is facing at such a young age and already developing prototypes to solve those sort of problems. I can't wait to see what they will do or what they will build next. And I think it's really kind of like little stories like this from the community themselves that really inspire us with regards to the design of our programs and how we can further like bring out that and realize that potential in the people that we work with. Yeah.
11 years old. Okay, that is really, really young. So I think that's quite interesting, like the stuff that you said. And specifically the point on your anecdote where the winning team in one of the hackathons may not have even wanted to apply because they felt too intimidated, or like they didn't think that they were cut out for it. Like that's an insight that I honestly didn't expect. The fact that just a little bit of encouragement of like that presence of an opportunity and that willingness to just take the plunge is something that is coming together and that is strengthened by a community that actually is very encouraging. It's some like it does help in unleashing people's potentials and what thanks so much for sharing that, Ernie. Okay, so I think there are quite a few points that you guys have raised through telling these like anecdotes, but let's talk about something a little bit more general. And you feel free to kind of push back against the question a little bit if you think that like you don't really agree with the premise. But I just want to ask you guys, like, on your personal opinions about whether you feel that people around maybe around your country, I guess, are inherently looking to create an impact. Like, do you think that people are inherently like, yes, I want to do good, or like, no, like they don't really care? And it would be, if you have any examples of like times where you've seen either one way or the other, like that would be quite interesting to explore as well. So this specific question is something that we've dug into over the past few talks as well. So what we're trying to do here is find whether there are any similarities with the experiences that all of you guys have had as social entrepreneurs. And yeah, just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I feel it depends on what you mean by creating impact.
I mean, maybe we can simplify it a bit. Like, are people generally inclined to do good for the world, or do you think that's a level of apathy, or like I don't really care, like it's not going to affect me anyway? Like, what do you think is the general? Like, I know that obviously exists like some people that are one way or some people that are another way, but as a general feeling, based on your own experience, being on the ground, interacting with people yourselves, like what's your take on it?
Okay, I mean, I actually feel like unless someone is a psychopath, I mean, I'm of the assumption that I think most people actually want to be good, want to do good. And it just may not come across as that sometimes, probably because of like the different interests that we have, the different communities and the different norms and the different starting points that we have. I mean, but yeah, I mean, this might not be answering the question from a sort of like what the Singaporean community feels about creating impact and all that. But I think basically you're coming from the point of view that whether you are Singaporean, whether you're Chinese, whether you're Indonesian, whichever part of the world that you're from, yeah, unless you're a psychopath, I think that most people want to actually do good, just that they may not be aware of the of the consequences of the actions on other people, or because of the environment that they're brought up in, it has made them look at the world a certain way. Yeah.
And I think that's a fair response. Like, just because you didn't answer the question of like yes or no doesn't mean that. I think what you've illuminated over there is that different people have different starting points. They have their different contexts, and that is going to shape what they feel is right or wrong, and like what goes on in their minds when they decide to take specific action. So that in itself was a pretty illuminating answer. So
right.
appreciate
I mean, I basically think that no one sort of like sets out to be evil and destroy the world. I mean, unless you have yeah.
Maybe some exceptions, but let's not go into that. Anyway, Anissa, what about you? What do you think?
So yeah, I think I agree with Ernie as well. Yeah, I think it's really hard to say yes or no, since because I'm working in this environmental sector where a lot of people, a lot of like some irresponsible people trying to destroy the forest and so on. So I don't know. I don't want to say they're evil and they don't want to make an impact. Well, they want to make impact by creating much money from destroying. So probably if we want to say, I think everyone's wants to have their usefulness. So I think when we use the terms of like self-validation, so everyone trying to get their own self-validation by doing something both good or bad. So maybe psychopath, it's getting validation by doing bad things so they can get acknowledged. So yeah, but I think if you use a positive mindset, because I'm currently learning about mindfulness. So basically I think what I've learned from this mindfulness, so yeah, everyone is trying to look for how to be like a useful person. And yeah, even though there are many ways, right? So it doesn't have to be like being an entrepreneur which really successful with I don't know, like 100 million revenues or so on. And actually everyone are trying to make like something good. So I think I believe to that. So although there are many, even I think if Godfather movies, I don't know, have you watched the movies? So yeah, it's a kind of a classic, and I found out that even their Mavia, so the characters actually kind of antagonist character, but actually we see that they're actually trying to do good even though they have to kill someone to help others. So well, yeah, it's kind of both. So actually the movie, it's kind of like moral question. So maybe we can see they're kind of hero to some group, but then they actually like a bad person to other groups. So yeah, but I mean, and if we use a positive mindset, then yeah, I think I believe like everyone's trying to do making impact, even it's really really small.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think one thing that you illuminated there is that in addition to the points that Ernie raised up, like there are gray areas around where we can't definitively say, oh, just because they are trying to cut down trees, therefore like they are evil 100%. There are going to be negative impacts that come out as a result of their actions, but the intention behind it might be to, oh, like make money, support family, that sort of thing. So I think one thing that is illuminated is that there is a certain importance, not just to cast people as like evil, not evil, but at the same time, like as individuals, there is sort of a need to understand the complexity associated with all of these in order to go on ahead within our impact journeys. That's kind of what I got out of some of the things that you shared. Okay, so before I continue with the final few questions, if there's anyone in the audience or if Vantri, like if you want to ask anything as well, like just go ahead, like type in the chat or the Q&A. Anissa, I saw that you unmuted. Like, is there something you want to add?
No.
Okay, all right. So I think the final two questions that I'll kind of poke into a bit is within your own. So feel free to describe whichever geography you want, whether it is your individual countries that you either reside in or like a specific other country that you might have a lot of activity in, or like an entire region, let's say. What do you think are some areas where there's a specific urgency for more people to actually come together, or like for ordinary people to attempt to create impact? This is one of the other questions that we ask every session. We have been surprised by the very, very different answers that have come out of this.
So yeah, the question makes me think. I think yeah, I mean, if we want to try to choose, if I want to choose like which geographical location, or yeah, I mean, like I think everyone, but I'm trying to think about in the context of this coronavirus, where like I think a lot of what is it, especially in or every country, the economy are really like they're it's destroying, and then trying to relieve. But I mean, in Indonesia, where since we are a very big country, and I think because we are currently shifting our behavior, where like now all activities are shut down, and then all what's it, like classes and webinars, everything are from home. And I think yeah, I mean, in urban city, there are kind of like really rapid change in terms of the mobility of each people. I think what I want to, if I have to choose, I think maybe people in urban area, especially in Jakarta and the greater area, because I think I just realized that we just make so many huge impact in terms of our consumptions, our mobility, where we creating more carbons. But then we just learn, like most people who actually working, they have to mobile from home to office. They actually can still can do some work without having to just what is it, making more carbon emissions to this earth. Because I mean, in Jakarta there is kind of like I think there's an article showing that the photo of the sky, where actually usually it's really, what is it, like foggy and um, like gray, but then in the past few months it's quite clear and it's really great. So I think, and then not everyone realize about this. So I think if I want to specify, I think like people in Jakarta, especially the ones who use private transportations, and I think they should take this as kind of reflection where they want to do in the future. So I think most companies now are trying to shift their, what is it, their culture, their working culture, which I believe hopefully all of this shifting can what is it, make the condition a little bit better without having to reduce the economic, what is it,
Mm.
the economic impact. I mean,
The economic impact. So you're talking about remote working per se, lah.
yeah.
Okay.
I think yeah, remote workers. Yeah.
Okay. So there's a certain urgency within Jakarta itself, and one thing that has highlighted the need for something to be done long term is that very stark difference between pre-COVID, post-COVID, like the air quality, the carbon emissions, like all this.
Yeah, but I mean, I still, I mean, there are many employees that really have to go to the office, so not every jobs can do from home. So, but at least the ones who can be more flexible, actually, they can do that. So I think the one who have a flexibility in do their working, because doctors cannot work from home, right? They have to examine their patients right away. Even though now you can actually call the doctor online and then they give you prescription, but still,
there's a limit to what they can do, but
Yeah,
there are also a lot of people,
theoretically you can operate remotely with 5G technology.
like the robots, is it?
Yeah, so which is why we need technology.
Yeah, Ernie, what about you?
I guess like so as Anissa was talking about COVID, I was just kind of like just thinking about all the things that's been happening this year, including this regional initiative that we've been designing from Singapore with a few stakeholders for a while now. And I also kind of like just reflecting and realizing that today is actually Chinese Valentine's Day. So 情人节快乐. And here I am on Zoom. and actually, and then I just remember that I also spent my February 14th Valentine's Day also on Zoom. But that was also like in the context of kind of like a call about COVID. And I think at that point in time, back in the middle of February, no one expected COVID to have unfolded the way that it did around the world, because at that point in time, it was still like mostly constrained to China. So I think something that sort of like emerged for me over this few months, just reflecting on how things have quickly changed, how like, on the one hand, COVID has been the one single best catalyst of digital transformation. Then centuries of CEOs and CIOs added together. But of course, at the same time, it has also introduced a lot of disruptions and challenges and suffering for a lot of people. But I think COVID has also really been that one thing that's really made me realize, as someone who's sort of like grown pretty accustomed to having friends from different cultures and in different countries and all that, that we are indeed interconnected, right? That what someone chooses to do with their diet decision, or what someone chooses to do about whether to go out or not, thousands of kilometers away. In the world that we're living in these days, there is increasingly interconnected and increasingly volatile, does have a impact on my life. And when we talk about globalization, there's not just the upside of it, but there's also the downside to all this increasing connectedness, right? So I think in light of that, sort of like coming to accept that you can't have your cake and eat it too, right? While we are enjoying all the benefits of having open borders and open flow of people and capital and all that, at the same time, it also does mean that I think unlike a previous era in which a lot of economies are kind of like winner takes all, right? you basically try to get ahead and you basically extract resources at the lowest possible prices from other economies, process them, go up the value chain, and then kind of like help your own people get rich that way. I think what's emerging for me in this time is really that perhaps a new sort of like paradigm is emerging in the sense that we are really only as strong as our weakest link in a world that is so interconnected that we now are living in, right? So even as there is all this sort of like tendencies to want to close borders or like shut out a lot of this external influence and all that, I think I mean, coming from Singapore, I think in a way by default, I am still pro sort of like a open global order in which we can freely move ideas and freely move around in search of the best innovations and all that. But how do we sort of like go about doing that, right? In a way that doesn't leave people behind? Because I think something that's also happening with COVID is that whatever existing inequalities or whatever existing digital divide there was has actually just been made a lot worse as well, right? Because people without sort of like quick internet connections or the relevant infrastructure will find that they are in a way at the even sort of like they are basically in a way at the shorter end of the stick when it comes to being able to continue working in this sort of condition, or maybe even having access to the most timely updates and all that. So I think something that I do hope that not only Singaporeans, but really Asians and maybe even people, I mean, young people in the world as a whole generally, able to really sort of like work on is how do we basically include everyone when we are trying to create all this tech, create all this digital innovations to solve problems. How do we do it in a way that doesn't widen whatever existing gaps that exist, right? How do we do it in a way that also allows the most vulnerable, the most marginalized to also have a stake at the table? I think those would pretty much be, I think, the issues that define the work that we do. Yeah.
Understand. So the way that Anissa took a little bit more of a micro view on like the things that needed to be addressed right now. Ernie, for you, you've kind of taken a more macro perspective of how like globalization isn't that new a phenomenon anymore, but we are starting to see not just the benefits of it, but also like the cracks that it has caused. People generally, like, there are certain instances where like people are starting to push back a little bit, but at the same time it is not something that we like, because we're already so interconnected. Like, the question now is like, how do we make it more resilient, how do we make it more inclusive, as opposed to like, how do we get rid of it so that like we won't have this COVID thing happen again. And I think your ultimate point is that the main matter of urgency per se is more that inclusivity aspect. Like, how do we continue to develop, but how do we also continue to make sure that people are not left behind as a result of the potential digital divide that is happening right now. Okay.
Yeah. Good
That's cool.
summary.
So there's one last question that I would like to ask before we take any questions from the audience, if there are any questions from the audience. And okay, so the initial question was like, are there any frameworks that you recommend for us to think about the social change ecosystem? But I think I want to broaden that question a bit. Like, are there any resources, any books, anything that you're reading or like doing right now that you think would be interesting for more people to explore, either to help themselves or to give them a better understanding about like social change, sustainability, that and anything like that? So any book, any podcast, any research paper, if you really want to recommend them a research paper, that would be great. But yeah, so any resource that you can think about that's interesting to you that you kind of want to share to other people.
Yeah, so yeah, during this pandemic, I had a chance to read a lot of books so lately, but I think the one that close to talking about social change ecosystem, I think the book from Malcolm Gladwell. I don't know if you know that author. Yeah, I think I really like his book. So I think he wrote several books, and I read 3 or 4 of them. One, I think, one title called Outlier or The Outlier. Yeah, it's basically the book is telling about how we define how we can see a successful person, and actually they are not coming from, what is it, like there's, I think, actually he trying to answer if whether there is a zero to hero, because there are a lot of narrations in many medias that, oh, there are some people like from zero background, zero capital, like from no one, and then they suddenly become a hero. And then the author began with a question: so is that really true, from zero to hero? And are there some person who actually already have some kind of basic skill set or knowledge, and then it makes them become successful? So, but from the book, it's actually, yeah, actually he gave one very famous example. So it's actually about Bill Gates. So because there are so many people, even include me. So we sometimes put a hero like the people who already, like, born with privilege, like for example like Bill Gates, and who else, like Elon Musk. And like we talk about those person, and then we just think, oh, how small we are. But then the book's actually telling about, no, actually they're not starting from zero. So they have some kind of some different entry level with us. But still, he make a conclusion that everyone can make a change, even though it's depend on what's your purpose. If your purpose is you want to be acknowledged, you want to be famous, so then, yeah, I think you will have those example, like people who maybe we know on YouTube, on Facebook. But still there are many what is it unknown people, and actually they make a very a great contribution to the community, which where we're talking about social change ecosystem. So I think we cannot rely on those big people, but actually it's kind of like a butterfly effect. So actually everyone can give a small input, and then we can create it. So I do believe that this creating this social change is not kind of like there was a one savior and then they changed through all the system. But I think it needs I think it needs support from all people, even though, well, if we see that, oh, they're not good enough, they don't have any skill set, but still I think they have a very specific role. They have a kind of make kind of an input to this social change making. So but in environmental issues, I guess, yeah, I think we cannot only rely on environmental activists or scientists, because like scientists are exist in the century, but still we're still trying to fight with the climate change. So yeah, I mean, it's not a good yeah, it's really challenging. So, and the other one, I guess, I'm currently listening one podcast from Professor Harvard. I think I forgot the name. Like Arthur Brooks. I think it's if you check on Spotify, you can write Art of Happiness. I think it's really good podcast.
Wait, Art of Happiness, is it?
Yeah, The Art of Happiness. Yeah, he also talks about like a community, how people trying to make a change. So I'm currently listening to that podcast. So yeah, I think I recommend that, those two.
All right, cool. So there's Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers,
Yes.
as well as The Art of Happiness, which is a podcast that you can find on like Spotify, Google
Yes,
Play,
on Spotify.
that sort of. I haven't heard of The Art of Happiness, so I'll definitely take a closer look at that one. Thanks so much for the Rex. So Ernie, what about you? Like what have you been busy with?
I haven't been doing much reading, but there is this one book that I'm trying to finish. That I think is really interesting. It's kind of like written by the godmother of systems change in a way. I think Donella Meadows. It's called Thinking in Systems or Primer. So I found that to be really interesting for thinking about ecosystems and communities, because I mean, it's kind of like this whole framework around how you should look at both the stock, at how much there is, and also the flow of resources, the dynamic trajectory of things in any ecosystem, to kind of like assess its health. And I think three things that I saw recently in that book kind of like really left a really impression on me, because we were also kind of like thinking about how we can scale communities. And then she was kind of like sharing like these three sort of like about these three characteristics that makes any good, in a way, any good system, I guess, or any sustainable system. And I thought those three characteristics were very good ways for thinking about sort of like measuring the health and the dynamicism and dynamism, yeah, and the sustainability of ecosystems. So they are basically resilience, at kind of like whether your system has this elastic walls around which there is some sort of like redundancy or margin of error with which it can operate and sort of like make some mistakes. And then hierarchy, about how actually like the purpose of the top layers are to make sure that they serve the bottom layers in that sense. And also self-organized, whether the system is self-organized as much as possible. And I kind of like just thought that those three principles are really good ways for thinking about building any community or ecosystem in general, because I guess like if you look at any systems, be it from the human body to the nature that we're in, any flourishing or healthy sort of ecosystem exhibits those sort of characteristics. So I actually found that to be a very sort of like concise way of thinking about the work of community building. And then apart from that, I haven't been listening to a lot of podcasts recently as well. I'll probably do more after I've gotten this new headphone. But I remember I really enjoyed listening to Ezra Klein. Yeah, he has some really great great interviews. EZRAKLEIN.
Like that's the podcast name or the host?
Like it's the name of the host. I think it's like some famous big shots in Vox or something.
Okay.
Vox or Vox, yeah.
I like how both of you like recommended a book as well as a podcast. Just gonna keep this personally is gonna keep me busy for. Okay, I've tried to look into thinking in systems, but
yeah, I googled the book as well.
Wow.
Is it by Donella H. Meadows and Diana Wright?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
I think she's sort of like, I don't know, the original systems thinker, or basically like she educated a lot of people in it. Yeah.
From MIT, I presume. But I think sadly she passed away like quite recently. But like her book is like I did read the preface and I tried to go through it a bit. Like the book is basically her life's work, so I like definitely will need to go through. And I think it's also important as individual actors like trying to do things within a larger system. Like it is also important to kind of get to know a bit more about the system and how best you can influence it. I think that's solid recommendation. Thanks so much, Annie. All right, guys. So
maybe you can give me a summary after you're done with it, so I can keep reading the book.
So I cheated a bit. Like I went through the summary first before I attempted to go through the book. If you want, I can send you the summary. Like it's available online.
Sure.
Reading book
legally
is quite challenging. Yeah.
All right, guys. Okay, so doesn't look like there's any questions from the audience right now. But I think nevertheless, like I do want to thank you guys for the time that you've given to be part of this discussion. I know that as with everyone that we've invited so far, no one really knows what to expect for this sort of thing. I just hope that it was a fruitful discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. And for what it's worth, like I really appreciate the sheer density of information that you guys have shared with us, both from your own personal experiences as well as like your outlook about like the social change space, as well as like just how ordinary people are. Yeah. So thanks so much for your time, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Irshad.
Thank you too. Yeah. And I'll see you guys in person someday soon, I hope.
One day.
Don't know when that will happen, but yeah, one can always hope.
See people in person.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
Singapore okay lah, yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Anyway,
guys.
yeah. Nice seeing y'all over Zoom. Bye bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank you
Take care,
guys.
guys.
Hope to see
Bye.
you soon.
Mm.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for the audience that stayed with us till the end.
Yeah, and
I-
also
Yep,
thank you, Pandri. I don't know if he's still there.
Yes.
Oh,
Please
he's
went to dinner.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay, I'm come back. Okay.
Did you have
Okay.
dinner?
So there no question from attendees. Yeah, I think
Yeah, just
No
if
question?
someone wanna ask. I think
yes,
we
please.
have Time.
Are there any attendees that want to ask? Okay. Okay. Thank you so much for our speakers, Ernie and Anissa, that already share with us in the 4th webinars of Ordinary People Achieving Impact. And thank you so much for your chat that already bring us the goods from our speakers.
Always a pleasure.
The attendees, we will have another session of Ordinary People Achieving Impact in
2 weeks.
2 weeks. It will be in 8th September 2020. The time is same, and we will also send you the link and information 1 week before the event, so you guys can get information regarding the session in your email. And also you can check this video and also the last 3 webinars in opai.me YouTube channel, and you can also access opai.me website to know more about Opai in 2 weeks. Okay, thank you everyone for your time and have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice dinner.
Bye.
Late
It's been a
dinner.
pleasure, guys.